Hello, everyone. Welcome to Trail Talk.
You were really excited.
Tina's very excited that we got it kicked off, right? So I'm Edie.
I'm Mary.
And we're coming to you live from the classroom studio at the Chisholm Trail Heritage Center in Duncan, Oklahoma. And, we're giving a big fat shout out to the farmers in Oklahoma.
Fat
Farm, not fat farmers.
Not fat farmers, no.
Like
shout out.
PHAT.
That's right.
Farmers.
They're cool like
Yeah, because they're cool. Yeah. How about that?
Thank
Yeah, nice cover. My kids would be very proud of me
Yeah.
for saying that.
Mhm.
So we're going to talk to you about Oklahoma cash crops. And the agriculture business in Oklahoma is not strictly crops. It's not just growing crops. A lot of livestock.
Oh, a lot of livestock's involved in Oklahoma.
Right, but we're not going to talk about the livestock side of things today. We'll save that for another episode. You know how we do, we stretch them out. But there are actually like 5 big cash crops in Oklahoma. And but first of all, before I talk about that, I just kind of want to hit on how important agriculture is to the state's economy,
The revenue.
Yeah. There are so many jobs and just ways that agriculture, crop production specifically, just kind of feeds back into
The
our
economy
state's economy.
Right.
Because we have manufacturing businesses in Oklahoma that use the products produced from these cash crops
As part of their business.
as part of their business,
Mhm.
like Shawnee Mills. That's
Mhm.
one that comes to mind. Shawnee Mills produces flour. Where do you think they get their wheat? From Oklahoma
Right.
farmers. And so
It's a big circle.
it is. The Made in Oklahoma building at the State Fair
Mhm.
is always one of my
The
favorites.
Mio.
Yeah, it's always one of my favorites to go into because you get to see firsthand all of the creative ways that Oklahomans use the things that they grow.
Right. And
here.
sometimes, like, you take your kids and like, oh, no, that was from Oklahoma.
Exactly.
But they recognize the name, the branding, and they comes from Oklahoma.
Right, exactly. And so we just love all of that. But there are more than 80,000 farms in Oklahoma that average 428 acres each. Now, this is a general kind of divide the total number of
Right.
acres that are farmed by the 80,000 farms. But if you guys will remember, one quarter section of land is 160 acres.
Mhm.
A full section is 640 acres. So these are it's not quite a full quarter section, but that's a mile in each direction around that. These are large farms. My parents have 160 acres, and I'm gonna guess they have maybe 40 acres of that land that
It's devoted to farmland.
they plant wheat.
Mhm.
And theirs is mainly for grazing their cattle
Right.
and for wheat. Just to reseed. They harvest it to reseed and then the hay
Mhm.
production. We'll kind of get into all of that part of it. But, farming is such a big deal associated with Oklahoma that we have colleges and universities dedicated exactly to teaching up and coming farmers, ranchers, all the newest ways to, get the most bang for their buck.
Right. From marketing to the actual farming of it.
Right, yeah, and just the most efficient way
To do it.
to do it, but also the best way to keep the soil healthy enough to produce the crops and just, oh my
Or
goodness.
whatever it is they might grow.
Right, there's so much involved with it, and people, if you haven't grown up around farming or haven't really had a chance to talk to people who are farmers, you may not really realize
All that it takes.
And it's
There's a
not
lot
just,
involved.
now it's not just passing down what what grandpa taught dad and dad is teaching their children. It's a whole education in it. And one of the coolest things that's come out of the agriculture part is the agritourism. I
You
love
love the agritourism.
I
That's
love-
kind of a hard word to say, agritourism.
It is, but what a cool way for farmers and ranchers to bring in additional revenue to, a
Something that's already
struggling,
there.
right? And I mean, being a farmer and rancher is hard work and people struggle with it.
Oh, yeah.
You are
You're
at the
you're
mercy.
Of the weather and of the soil and.
Exactly. There are so many things, but agritourism, I mean, think about, so there are you-pick farms, which, I mean, raise your hand if you've gone out and picked a pumpkin from somewhere,
Pumpkin patch.
or you can go pick berries or vegetables, things like that. Give your kids a chance to get out there and get dirty.
Hands dirty.
Yeah. Corn mazes, pumpkin patches, farmers markets, trail rides, vineyards, that whole side, the winery side of agritourism has just
blown up.
Yes, and that is so great. And then there's also a lot of like microbreweries here in the
Things like that
state
as
now.
well.
I mean, I love all the creativity. Wedding venues, that's considered a part of agritourism because the way they use the land, they repurpose land that maybe is not great farmland, but they're still able to use it and gain revenue from
Right,
it.
exactly.
So it's just a great thing. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about agriculture co-ops. I grew up, our family we were out in the country, but we did all of our business with our wheat harvest and everything with a co-op.
Right.
That was in a town just down the road. And a co-op is just farmers in the area pooling their resources to have storage, to have a place to sell, to have a place to purchase. I mean, seeds and chemicals and all of those kinds
Fertilizer
of
and all kinds of
things.
things.
Yes. And it's just such a great opportunity. And so farmers co-ops are a very big, organization, I guess. Right. But they really help the farming community. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about was, we're talking about cash crops. And so that means that this is a crop that brings cash to the farmer.
Right.
And so when you talk about cash receipts, it's talking about the total amount of crops or livestock, but we're just talking about crops sold in a calendar year. And so that's farmers keep track of their cash receipts for, for their income. I mean, that's their source of income most of the time, the bigger farms. My dad always had a second job, or really a first job. Farming was his second job.
Right.
But anyway, so, and then our number one crop is wheat, but we also, I thought this was so great. We also raise hay, cotton, soybeans, corn for grain, pecans, sorghum, peanuts, watermelon, rye, peaches, and oats.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yes, it is. It kind of, all of a sudden I was singing that little Oklahoma song in my head that named off all those different crops and things.
Different crops.
Yeah. All right. So Mary, how about if we talk about some wheat?
All right, let's
Talk about wheat. Now, I really love this picture.
Yep, that's an all too familiar sign.
Yes, it is. I mean,
Combine there.
We had a combine when I was little and it did not have a cab or anything. We just sat right up on the top of it, rode that thing and
rough ride.
yeah, put the dump that grain into a pickup or a truck. Yeah. And get down in there and sink down in that grain and play in it. Oh my goodness, those were the days. But here in Oklahoma, farmers sow, S-O-W, that's not to be confused with sow, like a female pig, but they sow 5 to 6 million acres of winter wheat
every year.
That is
a lot of wheat.
It is a lot of wheat, but I mean, just like my mom and dad, but they're not big time farmers for, selling and exporting and things like that. But they use that crop to feed their cattle in the wintertime. And it's called winter wheat. And that's because you let it grow. Well, you sow it and then you let it grow and the cattle come and graze it down. And then it grows back again. And that's the one that you let grow all the way to ripen for harvest.
To harvest out.
Yeah, so it serves two purposes with one planting, which is efficient. That's an efficient thing to do. So Oklahoma ranks, I thought this was pretty cool, number 3 in the nation in wheat production. That's pretty big.
It's a pretty big
It
accomplishment.
is. Top 10 states.
Trying to take it.
Here, we'll take that one.
We'll take it where we can.
Yeah, but the wheat that they produce, this red winter wheat, is used for bread making. And, that's just a staple.
Right.
A staple for
Everyone uses
everyone.
grill.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
yeah, pretty much everyone, buys
Some
bread.
form of bread.
And again, by processing all of everything in the wheat, the state, you have the plants that actually process the wheat. You have the plants that take that flour, the processed product, and then make it into something else. I mean, remember when we talked about Fields pies? Their crust is made with wheat flour. And so there's
something else
there's
that it goes into.
another industry. So I thought this was kind of interesting, this the information about this Chisholm Trail Terminal. So it's one of the largest terminals with, I don't know how many silos. So a silo, a grain silo, it's just kind of a round tower kind of thing. Yeah, and it just is a place where they store grain.
Right.
Yeah. And they say that a grain elevator, so they can move the bottom up and get the grain out. And
We
so
used to call them elevators.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But at the Chisholm Trail terminal means that it's a train destination also. It can hold 5 million bushels of wheat,
which is more than a dozen, equals more than a dozen 110 car railroads.
Can you, okay, you guys, I know you counted train cars before, 110, that's a long train.
Long train to sit there and wait on.
That's right. And that 5 million bushels would do
more than a dozen of those.
More than a dozen of those
So
trains.
at least
that size.
12.
Wow.
That size.
Wow. That is a huge,
Yeah.
huge
Imagine
place.
how much each one of those cars can hold.
Yeah,
Just in itself, then you have
Man.
110.
that is crazy. But it's a really, a very technologically run terminal. And so they have machines that can fill those train cars, and they do it very efficiently. And they can, and this, it's adjacent to the Union Pacific rail line that goes to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, you know what's going to happen in the Gulf of Mexico, that wheat's going to get put on a ship and exported somewhere.
Yeah.
And so there you see the money, exchange and how all of that works. So wheat harvest happened just a couple of months ago. If you guys look at this is like June. If you think about wheat fields, typically in June. Yeah, and the wheat fields are just this beautiful golden color. Now, this summer, it was a little bit off the normal schedule because it was so
harvest.
wet. Yeah,
They weren't able to cut.
Yeah, the weather was so wet that the wheat didn't turn as early, and you have to wait for it to turn and everything. But the yields were pretty good. So north central Oklahoma was about 200% above average. And in southwest Oklahoma, they were getting from 30 to 65 bushels per acre. So that's a pretty good, there are a lot of things that you have to look for whenever you take your wheat up to the co-op and they come out and they take a sample of it. and they're looking for several things. They're looking for healthy wheat kernels.
Mhm.
They're looking for weeds or other things that mimic wheat.
Right.
There's a weed called cheat that would get
Not
in,
wheat, but
yeah,
cheat wheat.
would get into the wheat fields where my mom and dad were, and it looked very similar, but
To the wheat.
instead of a round kernel, it was flat.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So they
and
look for that.
so they look for things like that in your wheat, and then they're able to give you a price, based on whatever
Quality they
the
find.
quality, yeah. And so it's really important. So what does that mean? That means they're having to spray for weeds or cheat.
Mhm.
They're having to make sure that other factors don't come in and do something to damage the crop.
Right.
They want the maximum number of kernels in each of these heads to be able to be harvested.
Right.
So,
For the maximum benefit
Right.
of their harvest.
yeah. And so with all the rain and everything this year, mold getting into the wheat was an
Big thing.
issue. Sometimes if that's the case, they'll put that aside and use that for seed wheat
Mhm.
for the next year.
For
They
next
can
year.
treat it and get the mold off so you get a full germination, and then they can
Start over.
start over with that stuff. But I thought that this was kind of interesting in the whole world,
Okay, we're talking whole world, not just state.
right? For the wheat crop that will be next year, it's projected to be a record 29.2 billion bushels of wheat
That's a lot.
produced. Yeah. Last year was about 28.5 billion. So 1 more billion
bushels.
bushels of wheat. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so impressive. And here's Oklahoma ranking 3rd in the United States.
Amongst all those producers.
Right. And so that's good news. That's good news for the wheat producers, and wheat prices is strong, in case you're wondering what it costs. It's about $6 a bushel. It was $7.25 in mid-May, but here's the kicker with that. The price of wheat was $4 a bushel.
Mhm. The average
Last
price
year.
last year at this time.
So excellent news for wheat
Yep.
producers.
Yep.
The rains probably, I mean, they still had good production, but
Right.
So anyway, weather plays a huge role in all of this, but
Everything.
we are so proud to be a great state full of wheat.
producers.
Yeah. I'm singing the little
I'm
song
waiting
too.
for it.
Brand new state, brand new state. Where the wind comes sweeping, the waving wheat
And
can
the
sure
butter.
smell sweet. I mean, we've been producing wheat a long time, y'all,
Mhm.
a long
Yeah.
time. So way to go, Oklahoma farmer wheat producers. All right, let's go to crop number 2. Mhm. Soybeans. Okay, so soybeans brought in about, between 140 and 150 $1 million in annual cash receipts.
Mhm.
That's a lot. That's a good
That's a good
chunk of money.
Yeah, I wouldn't
I
turn my
really-
nose up at that much.
But what they can do
With
with
the
the soybeans is pretty impressive. Now, I know soy additives. Do you remember when that was the big thing about McDonald's hamburgers?
Big soy.
Yeah, that
instead
they
of
had
meat.
added a bunch of
Mhm,
soy, and so
mhm.
it wasn't all meat. And I mean, there are things that people make that, it's not, it's a soy
Right, product.
product. But I mean, and to a degree, I think it's probably good for you. You can have a health, a plant-based diet.
Right.
I think if you
Soy.
want, if you eat soy products. So, there are a lot of different foods they make with it. They feed a majority of it to livestock,
So
though.
livestock is a lot of the reason for the
Mhm.
growth of it.
And we haven't been growing soybeans in the state of Oklahoma, I don't think, for all that long.
One of the newer
I used
crops.
to never see whenever you're a farmer, you just call them beans. And I remember going up to Minnesota and seeing all these fields and going, what is that? And well, they said it's beans. And then someone told me it was soybeans. I was unfamiliar with the plant.
Mhm.
But then I came back and started talking to my dad, and there have been incentives given to farmers in
To start
Oklahoma
growing them.
to start growing soybeans.
Huh.
And so that's one thing that you have these, let's see, what is it called? I can't think. There's a government entity though that assists with agriculture,
Mhm.
and they give
They wanna give
incentives,
incentives to the
yeah,
farmers.
to farmers to raise certain crops. And, you know, one of those things, you know, we talk about how the Dust Bowl came along because poor farming
Mhm.
practices.
Mhm.
So, you know, they plant the same crops in the same fields year after year after year, and that takes all the nutrients out of the
Right.
soil.
Right.
And so when you produce
it up.
different crops, then it gives the
Soil
fields
different nutrients.
because they use different things
Mhm.
from the soil. But so they use soy for food for humans and livestock, biodiesel fuel, which
Mhm.
I thought was
Turn it
interesting,
into the oil.
plastics and solvents. I mean, it's a part of
A
all.
lot of things.
A lot of
that you wouldn't
things.
think that soy would be a part of, for
Yeah.
sure.
So when they crush it, they turn about 80% into meal and the other 20% into oil. And that's where all the oil side is where
Comes
all
from.
of the very inventive, I think, ideas
From the soybean. and
from the soybean, yeah,
turning it
using
into
the
oil.
oil to make the,
plastics and ink and cosmetics.
yeah, all of those things. And there's like, you know, like we mentioned before, all of the different kinds of food products for people. Is tofu a soy product? I think tofu is.
I think tofu is.
Tofu is a soy
Tofu.
food. Yeah, it's a soy product. But didn't you love the little history of how the soybean got here
From China?
from China?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 1765. So this was a while back.
A few years.
Yeah. So the soybean came from Asia and came here. They used it as a ballast
Mhm.
in the boat. So that means they came over in basically empty sailing vessels, but they used soybeans as a weight inside the boat to help it ride, to help have a safe ride.
Mhm.
And then when they got to where the United States eventually became 1765, we were just not together yet. They just dumped all of the soybeans. They emptied their ballast out and filled it up with other things and took it back to China. And so that's how the soybeans got here. People planted them, and the rest is, as they say,
History.
is history. Yeah.
There you have it.
Yeah, but anyway, I thought that was kind of a crazy,
Kind of an origin story.
yeah. So, anyway, as far as current production of soybean, the national average, this is not how much they produce, but how much their the crops that they plant are successfully harvested. Okay. So the national average is 97% of the soybean planting process is successful.
Mhm.
So last year, Oklahoma was at 93%. This year, we're at 95%. So we're a little bit below the
Right.
national average, but we're right
It's
there.
nothing to be ashamed of.
Right, but I mean, it's just the farming practice of having a successful soybean
Soybean
harvest. Yeah, is really what those numbers relate to. Okay, the next crop, I think I might have got these.
Corn.
I really got these out of order, but it's okay. I'll tell you what the deal is in a minute.
We're
Had a
still
little
trucking
brain.
right along though.
Yeah.
We're still here.
So corn brings in over 120 million in receipts, cash receipts each year, making it a very successful cash crop for Oklahoma.
Yes.
But corn is another one of those grains that's just used for all
kinds of
all
things.
sorts of things. So corn for grain is what we don't really produce ear
Like
corn for that
corn on
we
the cob
eat,
type thing.
right? Yeah. Or popcorn, my favorite snack in the world, popcorn.
Yeah.
We
those
don't
are-
really produce popcorn as because that's a kind of corn. What is it?
It's a certain type of corn.
Yeah, let's see, what did this say about popcorn? It's made from one kind of corn that's allowed to dry on the stalk. Okay,
Mhm.
so Oklahoma, we're talking about corn for grain, which is then processed to make other things. Yeah. Most of the corn in Oklahoma is in the eastern part of the state or in the panhandle. So kind of opposite sides.
One or the other.
Yeah, is where they grow most of the corn. And it's either for grain or silage. So grain is what you would use to process and make other products. Silage is when they take the corn, allow it to ferment and make it into, you're thinking about corn liquor, aren't you? But that's not what they do. They make
Not
it
that
into,
kind of
yeah,
ferment.
it's made into feed for animals.
And livestock.
Yeah, swine, probably swine and cattle is what they would use it for. Dairies, dairies, feedlot. Oh, poultry too.
Mhm.
I guess chicken eat that silage. So I loved all this about how much corn is on it. I thought this is super nerdy about corn, y'all, but I think it's kind of interesting. So the average ear of corn has 800 kernels in 16 rows. I love to eat corn on the cob, and I have never counted how many rows are around an ear of corn or how
I'm gonna
many
do that
kernels.
next
I
time.
am too. I'm terribly interested in that now. I want to find out if this is accurate. Yeah. And it takes 25 gallons of water to grow one ear of corn.
That is a lot of water.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever grown corn, but you don't get very many ears of corn off of one stalk.
Mhm.
Like 3
Okay.
is about the
The
most that I've
average.
ever seen. You might be able to, like this is tall corn too. I'd never seen super tall cornfields until I went to Minnesota. And that, they
They're
have
super
like
tall.
very tall corn up there. Now, the places where they do those cornfield
Corn,
mazes, those at least have to be
Eye level.
about this tall, but anyway, that's a ton of water,
Mhm.
25 gallons for one ear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spend all your time watering.
And corn is measured in bushels, and a bushel is about 72,800 kernels of corn. I'm glad that wasn't my
Yeah, I
job.
didn't have to count.
Yeah, I don't want that one.
2.
Yeah, so they, about 60% is harvested to feed the livestock, made into the silage. 25% then is exported. And then the rest is used to make all of these amazing products.
Mhm.
Corn flour, corn starch, corn syrup, corn oil, baby food, margarine, detergent, sandpaper, chewing gum, road de-icers. I thought this was amazing. Antibiotics, potato chips, plastics, cosmetics, and rubber tires.
You just never know.
I
do you?
am
You
just blown
never know.
away by the many uses of corn. But this is again a testimony to how important agriculture is.
Right, it's in everything.
It
It's
is.
not just in the food you eat.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's important for people to understand. We are not just consumers like in our mouth
Mhm.
of all of what
These
these
crops.
crops do.
Mhm.
They impact
They're
our
on our
lives.
vehicle, they're on our bodies. I mean, they're
Yes,
used for all kinds of
so many different things. And lastly, the Department of Defense, the testing of let's see, where is it? Cornstarch sugar is being tested to remove toxic materials from groundwater. There's something about its chemical structure that it attracts solvents, pesticides, and hydrocarbons. I'm like nerding out so big on this because I think working in a lab where you
determine all that?
test all of that and just experiment after experiment. I mean, wow, how fun would that be?
Yeah.
I think that would be a
Or to
super
be
cool.
run through, hey, I found something.
Yeah, whoa, get over here. Look what the corn does now. But corn is just used for so many things.
And
And
you don't even
I
think about it.
mean,
You think
yeah,
corn, you think corn on the cob or a can
right,
of corn. And that's where
exactly.
it stops.
But I also think it's kind of, I mean, if you stop and think about it, the extreme sides of the state is where corn is grown.
Mhm.
Corn, this is the only information we had that told how much water is needed to grow
Mhm.
these plants. But that leaves most of the rest of the state probably
That's
growing wheat
Mhm.
or soybeans or the one we're going to talk about next. But what I'm getting at is Oklahoma is kind of five different,
Sectioned.
yeah, we're like five different states as far as the, I guess,
Agriculture.
environmental factors go.
Mhm.
And each of those probably produces different crops at
Based
different
on-
rates.
Well, and based on their soil and the weather that they get. And what's
Exactly.
perfect for that area.
Yeah, so how diverse for our state to be able to be high ranking in the production of so many different kinds of crops. I think it's a very cool thing. All right, next we are going to talk about cotton. So my dad used to talk about having to go pick cotton when he was a kid. And after studying this, I understand now why it was a deal to pick the cotton by hand, because cotton continues to produce more cotton. If you just pick
by hand.
pick out the
boll?
cotton out of the bowl, then it will produce more cotton. It's a continuing
Growing
growing plant. Yeah, it's not just like a one-time harvest like
Mhm.
wheat is
Mhm.
or any of these other crops that we were talking about. But I didn't know that. So there are two different kinds of machines used to
to
pick
mimic that
cotton.
hand picking.
Yeah, so there is a stripper and then there is the picker. I'm a picking and I'm a stripper. No, I didn't. Okay. The information I got was from an interview of a cotton farmer from the Altus area who I happen to know his wife.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So anyway, I thought
It's a reliable source.
I told my husband, I was like, I know these people. I know who this is about. But he has different types of land and some of it produces more cotton than others. And so for the lower yielding area, he uses the stripper because it's a waste to wait for it to produce more cotton. It's not going to be as efficient.
Okay.
And so the stripper goes through and it pulls the whole bowl and cuts down the stalk all at one time.
In one process.
Yeah, in one process. So it just clears that field out to be used for whatever next. But the picker has like fingers or prongs, and without material damage to the foliage or unopened bowls, it can be used more than once to pick the cotton.
Mhm.
I'm so
It
impressed
must be a
with
delicate
that.
machine.
It does. That's what I'm thinking too. I'm imagining like a Dr. Seuss thing, the little hand that comes out and delicately picks the bowls. I'm sure it's nothing like
I
that.
know it's
And
not.
cotton farmers, I'm not making fun. I'm just saying that, so, Oklahoma, over $350 million in annual cash receipts from cotton farming in the state of Oklahoma.
It's a lot of cotton.
That is a lot.
of cotton.
Yeah. And I mean, that I just think that is just it's a really great
Over
thing.
550,000 acres.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it's so much.
Yes.
And they make one bale of cotton weighs 480 pounds. So they really pack.
Yeah, that's
pack
really
it in. I don't know if
compact.
you've seen the bales of cotton though. They're big, but still almost 500
Yeah,
pounds of cotton.
And we know how,
Yeah,
how
each-
cotton ball,
right.
so you know how light it is.
Yeah, precisely. And I mean, of course, cotton is used it's the fabric of our lives. Sorry, it just sounded like the right thing to say at that time. But we're really glad for the cotton farmers and that Oklahoma turns out to be a great place to produce cotton. Okay, we're going to go to our last cash crop now that we've all gotten a little tickled. Hay. And in Oklahoma, there are several different types of hay. So like my dad, he and my brother both produce like wheat straw hay, and yeah, they make it into these round bales now. But like maybe you've seen in like on the sides of the road that there's a big wide ditch. That's just native grasses growing or tall. It's like maybe Bermuda or something like that, and it gets really tall. That can be made into hay. And they typically make that into round bales also. Alfalfa is another type of hay that's grown here in Oklahoma. And alfalfa hay is
it's more green.
It's green. It's leafy. And man, a bale of alfalfa hay weighs so much more than a bale of wheat straw.
It's very heavy.
Yeah, I never helped with an alfalfa harvest. Like when you go out and pick up the bales of hay and you buck them up and throw them to someone who stacks them on the back of a truck or a trailer. I never did alfalfa. I did wheat straw. But anyway, alfalfa hay weighs a lot. We used to feed
this more condensed.
Yeah, it's the stems are harder and thinner, and then it's leafy, and they just pack it in those bales. But yeah, alfalfa hay, and these are all winter forage for livestock.
Right.
They use them. They use them to feed. Now, wheat straw might also be used to bed animals down in a barn. Yeah, for them to stay warm, things like that. But anyway, so yeah, hay brings in roughly 100 million in cash. I should have called and asked my dad how much they can sell one of these bales of hay for now.
One bale.
But yeah, once the round bales started, people really prefer to have these. Of course, you don't have, if you just had the small square bales, you had to go out and throw a few of them every night. Yeah, and take the baling wire off and all of that. Well, these are tied up with twine, and you just, put your fork thing in there on your tractor and drive it and put it down, and the cows can eat on it for, weeks, maybe at least for several days.
Oh, yeah.
So this year, again, because of the rain, hay harvest was a little bit behind schedule, but typically they can get like 2 cuttings of hay off of a field in 1 year's time. And because of the rain and everything, they were kind of only just getting 1, which means people who have herds of cattle are going to have a hard time getting hay. And I don't know if you guys remember, but a few years ago, those fires up in the Panhandle, they burned all of their hay, and they didn't have any they didn't have any grass they didn't have anything to feed their cattle. And so farmers from other parts of the state took hay up there so that those farmers could feed their cattle. Now, if that's not a testimony to the close-knit community in agriculture, I can't think of a better example than that.
Right.
Of people who literally
help one another.
And they gave from their own, what they would be using themselves, they gave it to someone else who
Exactly.
was in need.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful picture of how they work together. But I mean, the weather pattern is really having an impact on the hay production for this year. Now, this is a little freebie I'm going to throw out there for y'all. I don't know if you know this or not, but when you cut the hay, there are these piles of this long grass or straw or whatever, and it has to dry. And if it rains while it's on the ground, it's really hard to get it dry. But because if you bale it while it's wet, it can spontaneously combust. The dampness inside there creates heat, and it will
Because it's so
combust.
dry.
But yeah, it's dry on the outside, but it's wet and gets hotter and hotter and hotter on the inside. Now, it's not like it happens all the time. I mean, most people,
No.
if you're a farmer,
Yeah.
not to this, but once they cut the wheat, they are constantly watching the weather because
Make sure it
they
doesn't get it
have to get it baled before it gets rained
like
on.
that.
Yeah,
That's
because
crazy.
then you can lose
the whole
the
harvest.
whole wheat hay harvest. So anyway, just another example of, farmers sometimes just have to work 24 hours a
Yeah,
day.
and they're constantly watching the weather and the winds and the sun
Yeah.
and the rain production. And
So many
everything.
things can impact. But there was some information about these weevils and aphids getting in the hay. And the information said that 10 years ago, the insecticides they used, they could get a 90% kill rate
right,
on these bugs,
but not so much
but
anymore.
not so much anymore. It's down to
30 to 40. Wasn't
yeah,
it?
30 to 40%. They can only get a 30 to 40% kill rate from these insecticides. So what's happened? They become resistant.
They're building up a resistance to those insecticides.
I mean, that is just the case. There's always that
Little bit,
mutation.
yeah. Yep.
The mutations happen with everything, and it's just a constant battle. But because of some of these bugs and stuff, transporting hay across state lines can be prohibited.
Quarantine.
Yeah, they might even have to quarantine the hay before they allow it to be transported so that you don't carry a bug.
Another area.
Yeah. So, it's, everybody understands what you say when you use the word quarantine now. Two years ago, not everyone knew what that really meant, but now we know, and you can imagine how it impacted the cattle drives. It impacts the sale of grain, hay, things like that.
Livestock,
Right, everything. And so, quarantine, some people, we kind of feel like, oh, this is a new thing. No, this has been a way
It's
of
been around
life
for a while.
for a long
It's just
time.
new to us.
Yeah.
In this generation.
Yes, exactly. So, that's been another one of those hardships that farmers and ranchers have endured for hundreds of years.
That's true.
So anyway, all that to say, well done, Oklahoma farmers.
That's right.
We are so proud of you guys, and for the way your families work together, and you just provide so many jobs and opportunities for so many
like one
people in
big
our
family.
state. It really is. It really is. So, tomorrow, we're very excited. Robin Arter, who's the executive director of Thinkability. Now, if you remember last week, we had
They were here as well.
they had some folks from the garden, Ernie and Sheila and Kyle all came, they work in the Thinkability garden. And but tomorrow Robin's going to be our guest, and she's going to tell us all about all of the other parts of Thinkability. So by the time tomorrow's over, you're going to know everything you need to know all about it. Exactly. And so you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. 3:00. That's right. And so until then,
Happy
happy trails.